at first it was very weird to start drinking at like 7 p.m., which back home is not even my dinner time. Here in Canada, my friends are like, oh yeah, I want to get married by 33 and have kids by 35 and have a house by... So everything is so organized here. Like their lives are like, created by the year. But there in Barcelona is more like, oh, let's just enjoy and let's just go with the flow.
Welcome to the Dating Beyond Borders podcast, where I sit down weekly with guests from all around the world to chat culture, dating, and human connections. So join me and let's break down these barriers together. Welcome to another Dating Beyond Borders podcast. Today's guest is someone you would have definitely seen time and time again if you had a chance to watch the channel. Irina has taken part in many studio videos to talk about the culture and specifically the dating culture of Spain and specifically the dating culture of Barcelona, where she is from. So welcome to today's guest, Irina from Barcelona.
Thank you.
I always feel like saying Vicky Cristina Barcelona.
Yeah, they've told me that before.
You get that a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So Irina, we obviously know each other. We've seen each other many, many times in person. We're in the same city. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself if they haven't watched the videos, if they don't really know who you are. Obviously, right now you live in Toronto, Canada. What prompted the move to Canada?
So, well, hi everyone. My name is Irina. I'm from Barcelona and I moved to Toronto about 4 years ago. So quite a while now. And I moved here because I just love the country. The first time I came, it was 2011. And I just came for like a 3-week English studying course. And I just love like how North American it looks. I love like the skyscrapers. I love the people. I saw like the culture was very open. And I knew that was going to be my country at some point. So then I came back in 2016 for an exchange program when I was in college. I lived here for about 5 months. And then I just applied to move permanently. And here I am since before COVID.
It's so interesting because whenever people think of Barcelona, they're probably thinking like, this is such a great city. Why would you ever change that up for a cold Canadian city like Toronto?
I would say that's the top one question I get from everyone in Canada. I think Barcelona is amazing. It's definitely one of my favorite cities. I go back as often as I can, at least once or twice a year. But I think like it's still a little bit conservative there. I think a lot of things are very different from here. We are not that open-minded there. So I really like that difference here, that here you can be whoever you want. Like for me, there was a whole thing when I moved that people would wear like, I don't know, let's say purple hair. And people wouldn't care, like they wouldn't even turn. And if you do that in Barcelona, it would be like, oh, wow, look at this person is doing that and look at the hair. So I really like the fact that they are not into your life. You can just do whatever you want, be whoever you want. And people here in general, they're very respectful, which I don't think it's... They're respectful in Barcelona, don't get me wrong, but like not as much as here.
Yeah, but because whenever I think of Barcelona, I think like it's probably the most liberal city in all of Spain, is it not?
I would say so, yeah. One of the most for sure.
And even that's not enough as in Toronto.
Yeah, like I feel Canada, we have a lot of immigration here, which in Spain is not the case. It's very rare seeing like immigrants there. It's growing for sure, but compared to Canada, it's like nothing. Like you cannot even compare it. So for us, seeing someone who is not a Catalan or a Spanish is like, ooh, that's different from us. And I feel that's something that is getting better, but still like some regions are more conservative than even Catalonia. So I feel we're we're the most open because Barcelona is a huge city. So of course you have immigration there. But for example, maybe the South, that they have less immigration, there they're even more conservative. So I would say, yeah, Barcelona for sure is one of the top liberal, but compared to here, I think less for sure.
I would be interested to hear some of the things that you really love about Barcelona and some of the things that you don't like. And just to preface that, one of my friends, she recently moved to not recently, I think she's been there for 5 years. And she used to love the city. But one of the things she complains about a lot is she feels like it's really transient. And it's very much a party city, she says. Like people come there to have parties. And she's now like in her mid 30s, and she's not in that space anymore. But she's almost like, well, now it's the lifestyle. So she's always out partying, but she doesn't feel like she belongs in that anymore. So what is your like personal take on Barcelona?
I think Barcelona is amazing. We have amazing food. Like if you go there, go eat everywhere. Like we have like a lot of nice food and tapas. But I think now there is a huge issue with tourism. There is like too much tourism. Like you go in the city, like downtown, and you don't see any Catalans or Spaniards anymore. It's just like tourists from everywhere. So I think it's becoming a very tourism orientated city. So the people who live there, they don't feel like they are from there anymore. Because I feel like everything is like, oh, stores with like souvenirs and like maybe like the small stores that they used to have, they're going away. Also, there's like a neighborhood next to the sea, which is called Barceloneta, which it used to be like fisherman neighborhood, like very like local people, and now it's becoming a lot of like Airbnbs and like tourism apartments. So people from the neighborhood, they have a lot of complaints. Like now, I just go out and I see people like peeing on my door and like doing all these things and like puking after clubbing, and everything is very orientated for that. And I think that's also kind of the tourism that they are attracting. So it's like feeding each other. So I think that's why that's a huge issue right now. And that's something that the city hall needs to address as well. We have a lot of cruise ships as well, which I get it. Like Barcelona is amazing, and I would recommend everyone to go. And you have a lot of things to visit. But now I feel they are targeting more to like party and like alcohol, and so it's like getting worse as a city.
Yeah, and a lot of crime increase as well, right? That's the other problem, I would assume.
Yeah, I was talking to my parents like last week, and they were telling me like they know so many people now that they get robbed in the street at like 5 p.m. Daytime with like knives or things like that, and they steal like jewelry, like wallets, and pickpockets has always been a thing in Barcelona because we always had a lot of tourists. I used to work in downtown, so every time I had to take the subway, I would see every single morning people getting stolen their wallets, but it was mostly targeted to tourists. Because I feel like if you come, for example, from Canada, that here crime is very low, you won't be like, oh, I need to check my wallet, my backpack, because you're used to like, no, nothing is going to happen here. But then you go there and they are that relaxed. And then, of course, pickpockets know that. So it would be very easy for them. And at some point, I would see it every morning how they were stealing from tourists. And I think now it's also going into locals. They're just stealing everywhere. I guess like also inflation, like the situation, everything, it's like also adding there. But it's getting very bad. So yeah, be careful when
That's
you go.
That's crazy that you used to see that every morning. I remember I went like years ago and I had to read this manual, and that manual listed the ways that you might get robbed and you might not know it. And one of the things was like they would say, hey, can I get your help? And you'll be helping with something and someone would come and rob you. And the way they do it a lot of times is like you wouldn't even notice until hours afterwards. So they're very good at stealing.
There are two main things that they do. Well, at least that I notice. If in summer you go in summer and you see someone with a jacket in their hands, most likely it's a pickpocket because they use the jacket, they put it on your backpack, so then you don't see what's happening, especially if it's like a crowded subway, and they would just steal from your backpack. So if you see a jacket in like 40 degrees, just get suspicious there. And also what they do is that if you're like in a bar or restaurant, they will put a map on the table to be like, oh, can you please show me this? And someone else or even the same person under the map would take your phone or your keys, whatever you have on the table, so you wouldn't notice. And once they're gone, you are like, oh, my phone. So yeah.
It's so crazy. So actually, just for reference, the first time I went to Barcelona, I was so excited. This was like, I think over 10 years ago. And I got to Barcelona. I went on one of those cheesy Contiki tours. And I get out of the bus. I go to one of the neighborhoods. I didn't know the neighborhoods. I didn't know that it was a sketchy neighborhood. I get there, and this little kid comes up with two sisters. And he's like, can you give me some money, lady? And I was like, I no. And I had my wallet with me. Like, how stupid was I? And the kid goes up to me, and I kid you not, he slaps me on the face. And at this point I was learning Spanish. So my mind is, what do I say to him in Spanish out of all the things? And the girls just kind of smirked. They did nothing and they walked past me. And I still to this day
Mm.
don't really understand like why slap me? What is it? Was it a way for me to lose my control and they would steal the wallet? Was it just a slap for no reason at
Mm.
all? But it was like my first experience in being in Barcelona was getting slapped by this little kid. It wasn't always like I went back a few
Mm.
other times and I had good experiences, but yeah, this one was,
Yeah. I
yeah.
think as long as you're careful, like for me, for example, usually like people who live there, we know who might be a pickpocket for the way they act, or like the way if they wear like the jacket, things like that. So you would kind of guess, and you would be very careful, and the backpack always in front and everything. But I guess tourists are just on vacation. You're not thinking about, oh, they're gonna like steal from me or like rob me. So I think that's why they take advantage of that. But yeah.
Yeah, it's something very, very interesting. That like, about Barcelona, because so many of us had this dream of living in Barcelona. It has everything, it really does.
Mm.
Like it has the beach, you're close to the islands, you have amazing food, you literally have everything at your doorstep. But going back to coming to Canada, um, what were like some huge culture shocks that kind of jumped out at you when you arrived?
First, I want to say it's very different from Barcelona. Uh, I don't think I can compare anything at all. Not even like the food, the city, the people. Like everything is super different. So I would say 90% of the things were a shock to me. But I would say like the top one shock for me was like the people. I feel like here they're very, very cold. They have like the small talk, so you cannot speak about certain topics. It's very hard to get to know someone. They're very distant. So it was a weird because they're very friendly in the sense of like very welcoming and very respectful, but at the same time it's very distant. Like, okay, I'm gonna be nice, we can speak about the weather, the sports, but then don't get too much into my life. So it was like a weird balance that I had to understand, and it took me like I would say a good couple of years to like really understand, okay, I can talk to you but not too much, and I can talk to you certain topics but not too personal. And I think that was very hard for me because in Barcelona, it's so easy to talk to everyone. You talk to everyone, anywhere, anytime. You make friends everywhere. But here it's like, no, this is my life. And even like, for example, in Barcelona, it's very normal that you go out with your friends and they will bring their friends and friends of friends of friends of friends. And then you get to know so many people through your friends. But here's like, oh no, I have three groups of friends: my school friends, my college friends, and my work friends. And I don't mix them. And the few times I mix them, it's like a huge deal for them. It's like, oh, I'm going to bring someone who is not from the group. Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, and in my friends here, I mix them all the time. So all my parties, they know each other already, even if they're from like different groups. But I think for them, it's a huge thing. I think like socializing here, it's like very hard for them, I would say. So that was very shocking for me. And then the food. The food is something very bad here. Like I cannot live with like Canadian food. Everything looks so beautiful. Like I go to buy, I don't know, an apple. Everyone would be like shiny green apples, perfect size, all of them. But then they taste like, I want to say plastic, but like nothing like savory. But then I go to Barcelona, we have all these like ingredients and like fruit and veggies and like everything is like healthy-ish. And even here, when I came, I was trying to eat healthier, and still I was gaining so much weight. And I was like, how come if I'm eating way healthier than back home, I'm being unhealthier? Like it makes no sense to me. And then I met like a nutritionist, and then she told me, yeah, like food here, we don't have as many controls as you have in Europe. So clearly very different. So yeah, if you go to Barcelona, food. That's what I do, and I try to bring as much as I can when I fly back.
Yeah, I remember this Italian guy telling me like, I can eat pasta every single day in Italy and I don't gain weight. But here it's like, do they add sugar to it? What's going on? Because I gained so much weight. So I think it's that kind of, there's always that comparison between like North American food and European food. And again, I think it tends to differ within Europe as well, because you really have some unhealthy countries in there. But the produce is healthier, yeah. And I love Spanish supermarkets. Like I love them. They're so good. And alcohol is so cheap. Oh my God. Like any kind of
Yeah.
alcohol, but especially wine, of course.
That's another thing. You see, like here in Toronto, you need to go to a specific store to get alcohol. And then a few supermarkets, we have like maybe beer or wine. But in Barcelona, you can buy alcohol everywhere. Like in a supermarket, you would find vodka, tequila, gin. When here you cannot. So for me, that was like, how come I need to like do one more stop in my day to day to buy alcohol separately? Like for me, that's like, why? And yeah, I miss that.
I get that. So how does that affect? So you mentioned like it's easy to become friends with anyone anywhere. Whenever you go out, people bring their friends over. And I'm assuming also like if you have a table here and a table there, people sometimes just start talking and become friends from the get-go. Um, how have you found the that part of going out and the nightlife here in Canada?
Very sad compared to Barcelona. Um, for example, there, our clubs, they open at midnight and they close at 6 a.m. So even if you don't stay until like last call, you would leave at like 4 or 5 a.m. And here they open at like 9, 10 p.m. max, and then they close at 2 a.m. And even usually some of them even at 1 a.m. And then they stop serving alcohol an hour before. So for me, the time they close here is the time I would go to the club in Barcelona. So with the years, maybe because I'm getting older, but I also see some pros here because then you get the next day, you wake up kind of early compared to like Barcelona, because if you go home at 6 a.m., usually you would go for breakfast, you would buy like a croissant, something like that, and then we just go to sleep and then wake up 3, 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So you basically lost your Sunday or your Saturday. But here at least I feel like, oh, 10, 11, I'm already awake. So I still have the whole day to like do something. So that's something I appreciate now. But still, at first it was very weird to start drinking at like 7 p.m., which back home is not even my dinner time. So I was like, okay, I'm drinking and I'm not even for dinner there. So at first, when I was with my friends, oh yeah, I don't know, one day I had dinner at 5 p.m. with some Canadians and then we're going clubbing. And I was telling my friends, I'm meeting 5 p.m. for dinner. And they were like, are they crazy? And I was like, I know, like, what's that? So it was a little bit of a shock getting used to the times here. I'm still having a mix, so I'm still like late for Canadians. I eat like later than my team at work and my friends. But yeah, that was a very shock as well.
It's interesting to hear you talk about it. I think this is the most Spanish phenomenon ever. Like eating incredibly late, going out incredibly late. I think the only country that I know that does it later is Argentina, and there they
Oh,
just take
really?
it to a whole other level. Yeah, I remember I went to Buenos Aires and I mean, I think you start drinking at 11. I don't remember. They have the previa, which lasts
Yeah.
forever in a land of hell for anyone that likes to sleep. It's never ending. Like they would drink and drink and drink and drink. And I think only at like 1 in the morning they would say, okay, let's go to the club. And you go to the club and it's again, it's pretty much like Spain. Like you stay there until 6, 7 a.m. But you rightly said so. Like the older you get, the more you appreciate the earlier finish to the nightlife because you're like, well, I don't want to waste the next day. And hangovers are so hard to they just get harder with age. But I get that. I think there's something, I don't know what the theory was about the Spanish time. I think that like you guys live on some sort of different, there's a GMT time zone or something like that that makes Spaniards have a much later um, dinner and nightlife because Italians and Portuguese, they don't do that. It's just Spain for whatever reason.
I don't know for the other countries, but I know for Spain we have like 5 meals during the day. So usually breakfast is like later than here. And then we have like a break in the middle of the morning, like around 10, 11, or you would eat like a small sandwich or something like that. Then lunch, and then you have another break in the middle of the afternoon, like around 5, 6 p.m., where you would eat also like a sandwich, a fruit, something like that. So I think that's why also we are later because we eat more often. So then, yeah, there is more like break between.
So what time is your like biggest meal?
I would say lunch at like 2, 3 p.m.
Okay. And then dinner is also pretty big, I would say. And then you eat that very late.
Yeah, like 8 to 10 p.m. Yeah.
Mhm. And what I really love about like the Spanish, uh, like the whole art of eating in Spain is that you go out and you go out with friends and you share all the like the you have share the foods a lot of times. Like you have the tapas, and it's this whole like it's a very social thing to do. You know, to go out and just have food together. I really love that. I think that's something uniquely Spanish as well.
Yeah, that's something also, for example, here, that was also like very different from Barcelona, like at work. Usually, when you're in Barcelona, after work on a Wednesday, you'd be like, oh, let's go for a beer. And you would go with your whole department or team or company just to a bar, drink some beers, just chill there, talk about life. We don't have those like band topics, so we can talk about anything we want. Um, and then that's it. Next day you go back to work and that's okay. But here is like, oh no, how are you gonna hang out with someone from work without knowing them? And I feel for there it's like very chill, very normal to like, no, just hang out. That's it. Like it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. I think maybe the biggest difference that I find with Spain and a lot of the Southern European countries is that you really enjoy daily things, you know? You don't focus on the work, and like getting somewhere. It's more like let's be in the here and now type of feeling, which I think we really miss a lot of us, you know, as we're like striving to achieve more and climb the corporate ladder and, you know, doing more, but like not just taking the time to chill, have a beer and just hang out.
Yeah. I feel like at some point I feel it was a little bit empty there. I think that was also maybe one of the reasons why I moved here. Because I moved here in my mid 20s. And yeah, it was good to go out clubbing. I love clubbing. I still do it when I go there. But I feel it was too much of it and not, we don't care about our careers there. Not that we don't care, but it's just like one more thing in our lives. So I feel like I don't want to, I was missing like meaning in the life, but like I was like, okay, it's good to go out, it's good to make friends, but like what else now? So, and I also think we have different priorities because this one, I don't understand why, but for example, here, if you say like the economic side of the country, it's way better. Like salaries are higher, even if prices are higher, it's way better than Barcelona, like apartments, everything. But then, for example, traveling in Europe is so cheap. And here, just traveling to like Montreal, which is like an hour flight, is like $200, which is like 150 euros maybe, a little bit less. So I think there it's like more affordable to have like fun plans. When here, if you just want to go for a beer, it's gonna be like $50 because you need taxes tip, and we don't have those things there. It's just like you go for a beer, €5, not even, and that's it. You're happy with your beer, and like you move on. So I think there's also like this part that do anything here, it's very expensive, even go for dinner. So I think that's also a challenge here. If traveling was cheaper, maybe, priorities would change.
I think those are such great points. Like, first of all, what you're saying with, I mean, first of all, okay, comparing travel from Barcelona, I would say is the most profitable out of all of the European cities. I've tested this. I have that friend that lives in Barcelona. She flies somewhere every single weekend. And I had this conversation with my mom, and my mom was like, no, that cannot be the case. COVID has really shifted the prices. It's probably very expensive. And I started trying to prove my point. I searched Barcelona to Belgrade. I searched Barcelona to Athens. I searched Barcelona to Paris. I searched Barcelona to even like way further cities. And it was like within 20 euros to 100 euros if you take a backpack, of course. No luggage. But it was so cheap. And I was so pissed off the other day because I was trying to go to Niagara Falls. And there is no, like, unless you're driving there, it's so complicated to get there. I was like, I used to live in Portugal. I could get from Lisbon to the Algarve in 2 hours. And in 2 hours here, I'm in Niagara. Like that, the difference is huge, you know? So of course, people can just enjoy their lives much easier. But of course, but you're right, the salaries are also very different. I think in Barcelona, maybe there's not really so many ways that you can make a lot of money. So people don't stress so much. They're like, well, this is what it's going to be. You know, I'm just going to enjoy my life. But the
Yeah.
really great point that you raised that I really love is that you said at some point it got a bit meaningless as well. Like going out, drinking, having food and chatting and all this kind of stuff is great. But once you hit your 30s, you're like, okay, what else? Right?
Yeah, I think like there we focus more on short-term goals. Like, okay, I'm having fun. I'm having a job that, gives me money to like enjoy, to travel. But I don't think we look at the future as much as they do here in Canada. Like here in Canada, my friends are like, oh yeah, I want to get married by 33 and have kids by 35 and have a house by. So everything is so organized here. Like their lives are like, created by the year. But there in Barcelona is more like, oh, let's just enjoy and let's just go with the flow, which sometimes is good because it's like you don't have that like much stress or like we're more relaxed in that sense. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but what am I working for? Like, yeah, okay, to go on a trip to a country, but like, what else? So that's why I felt like, okay, it's good. I like my friends. I'm happy here, but what am I doing? Like, yeah, I have a job I like, but I'm not, thinking about like a promotion or like things like that. So that's a huge thing as well. When I came here, it's like career is a huge thing here. Like you need to achieve the best promotions and like best jobs and your skills, and people do courses to get better. And I'm like, wow, 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 that's a lot. So it does take me some time to like get used to it. But I think long term, it's better here because I like that I have goals.
Where do you see where do you see people being more happy? What have you noticed? Spain or Canada?
Spain. I have to say, like, I feel like here is because of winter. A lot of people get depression and like, well, probably like mental health is a huge thing here. Like a lot of people are struggling with mental health, but in Barcelona we don't. Of course, you will have people, depressed as well, but in general, people are very happy. Like people have their lives. We enjoy. We have a lot of friends. Life is kind of easy. Taking away like the money side, life is great. There like you can live nice with your friends, your family. So I would say they're way happier. But in my case, I love winter. So for me, I'm very happy with snow. So that's why for me, that was not an issue. But I would say 90% of my friends are like very sad knowing that it's going to get all of snow in like a month. So yeah, very different.
Yeah, I'm one of those people. I hate the winter.
How? It's so pretty.
You know what I found, like the more I kind of research the different cultures and stuff, the more I realize there's literally like no right way or wrong way to do anything. People just can be really happy in the weirdest circumstances. You can be living in New York and have it all, sell it all, and move to Sri Lanka and live the best life. And you can be in Sri Lanka completely miserable. Like
Yeah.
there's so many different ways, and like we all are so different in what we like and what we don't like. So it is interesting that for you, maybe the Barcelona lifestyle didn't work, or maybe it didn't work for now. Maybe afterwards you're going to say, enough is enough. I'm moving back. I met a girl when I was in Germany. She moved to Germany because she was facing kind of the same crisis where she was like, people are just enjoying their life, but there's nothing else there. It's very similar to Spain in that sense. And she just said, at some point, it's kind of like people feel you're almost stuck in that you're not moving forward. There's nowhere to move forward. And she moved to Germany 10 years in. She just turned 40 and she had kind of what is it? It's not really a midlife crisis, but almost there. And she said, no, this is not life. People, all they do is work here. Which is, I find it so hilarious because there's always these Americans versus European comparisons. Oh, Europeans, they just drink wine. I'm like, have you been to Germany? So she said German life was all about work, and she absolutely hated all aspects of German life, and she moved back to Italy immediately after meeting a man, falling in love, and getting married. So I don't know, it seems a bit like a fairy tale, but so it's something like what works for us at 25, it doesn't work for us at 30, it doesn't work for us at 35. Like we change so much, but it is interesting that you noticed it. Like you had some introspective moments where you're like, what is at the end of all of this? Like, are we all just going to party?
There is another point for Spain. I think we are later in life. Like, for example, here in Canada, I feel like people in their 20s, mid-20s, are getting married, which in Spain, it's very rare that you see people getting married before like 30s, mid-30s. So that's why I feel like probably maybe in a few years, I would like match, like their, I don't know how to say, like life cycle there. But I felt like, yeah, like until you are like probably like late 20s, you won't think about like settling down. When here, I feel like a lot of people here are like, oh no, my goal is to get a partner, get a house, get the kids, like the whole North American dream kind of that they sell sometimes. But for us, it's like, no, we need to enjoy life, go out, and then when we're in the 30s, then we can settle down. But you have all these 10 years when you really enjoyed, have your experiences, travel, met new people, and really enjoy life. So I think that's also like a thing different from here, that we just like later to like do all these things that they do here, but we just enjoy it longer.
That is so interesting that you mentioned that because when people think of Spain, they think of Latin America. Like they put them two in the same kind of mold and say, "Oh well, Latin Americans are so spicy. Spanish people are so spicy. They're so warm. They're so warm." And they fall in love. They're so passionate. They get married. I'm like, no, no, no. They couldn't be further apart. They're so different. So let's talk about some of the specifically Spanish things and specifically related to dating because I think this is going to be groundbreaking for a lot of people.
To be honest, like related to South America, like how they compare us. So right now, my partner is Mexican, and I used to think like, yes, Spain were like very, romantic and like passionate because of course I was comparing us with like Europe. So if you compare it with like Germany or like, other countries, they're more like cold in that sense. But then when I met him, I was like, wow, that's like very different. Like they're very passionate about like huge gestures and like flowers and things, which then made me realize like, okay, we are not, that passionate and romantic. Like they really live that we are not like this. So yeah, I think it's a huge difference that usually they compare us and we have a lot of similar things. But I feel in like dating scene is like pretty different.
Yeah, how is the difference? Tell me.
Yeah, for him, like everything is like very, gestures. Like I used to get flowers every 2 weeks. Like I went on a trip and when I came back, I had like pictures on my wall about my trip. Like he printed, and it's nice because you're like, okay, so all these things that we don't have there, and I thought we were passionate. So that's a huge like difference for me. But yeah, I think like for example the language, even if they say like, oh, you all speak Spanish, like a lot of words and expressions are very different. So at first I was like telling him words and he was like, what does it mean? And the same the other way. So still we are, like trying to understand some expressions from each other because it's like very different. Even though I don't know it was that different until, I really live with him. And I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, we're pretty different.
Yeah, you're like, vamos a coger el bus. He's like, what?
Yeah, even some expressions. So, for example, in Spain, I say a lot que asco, which is like, it's disgusting. But then for them, it's like guacala. And I was like, what's guacala? Like, what is
I've
it?
literally never heard that before. I've heard the fiasco. What?
So that's what I was like, guacala? Like, what are you talking about? So, yeah, I think it's like very different in that sense. But it's funny as well to try to understand. But yeah.
No, it's so true. Like I've spent a lot of time in Spain and in Mexico. And in Spain, of course, it also depends like which region, because
Mm.
Andalusia, you understand literally nothing that comes out of their mouth, me personally. But in Mexico, I can understand them super well. So I'm like, oh, in Mexico, I feel really comfortable. But in Spain, I don't understand half of what you guys are saying. But that is interesting that you say like the gestures, because and I would love to hear about your experience with dating in Spain, because there is that notion that like, oh, Spaniards are supposed to be very romantic. But as you've mentioned, like commitment isn't that much of a thing. I mean, people wait a long time to get committed, even more than in Canada, which I don't think is even that much focused on commitment, you know?
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, I think it's very different, especially compared to Canada. Um, so for example, I think in terms of expectations, we don't have expectations. If we are dating someone, you just go out and you would split the bill. And you're not expecting the other person to pay for you. You're not expecting that they will like pick you up and like drive you home. And like, which I think in Canada, it's a huge thing here. Like, girls expect a lot from guys. At least that's what I feel. Like, all my friends are like, oh, yeah, the guy needs to have certain amount of money. Like, money is a huge thing here. In Spain, I don't think I know anyone who cares about the money of the other person. Like in general, girls and boys, they're like, no, you care about like if you like the person, if like it's nice, if you have the same taste. But like I would never be like, oh, you don't have money, I don't like you. Like I think here in Canada, that's very important for a lot of people that I know. Like my partner needs to be like established, have a good career, have money. Like they have a lot of things that they take into account when dating that we don't. For us, it's like I like the person that did. Like I don't expect the person to pay everything for me. Like I think also like gender roles. Like for us, we're pretty equal, or at least in Catalonia. So I expect to be 50-50 money wise. Like I would never expect the guy to pay the rent, things like that. When here I know they do. So for me that was very shocking as well that money was such a huge thing. Like I don't know if it's like more capitalist mindset here, but like I was very surprised that it was such a huge thing. And same with like the dating. Like you would like date someone in Barcelona, but that's it. You would go out, meet your friends. But here I feel like they expect a lot from their partners, both ways. Like I don't know. Here, for example, the girl needs to be like very like makeup and like the dress and the heels. When there is like I'm just going out with whatever I'm dressed, like normal clothes, everyday ones. So I think that was very different. Yeah.
Is it also like a big thing for first dates not to have very formal first dates in Spain? Do you just go out with your friends and then kind of he takes his friends? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think it's very chill in general. Like for example, a first date can be go to a bar and go for beers. And that's the most normal thing, just be there, chill, have a beer, talk. And I think that's also a thing here that I don't really like is like it's very hard to get to know someone here. Like here you have so many like, oh, you cannot ask this question, you cannot ask that question, and you need to be so formal. And I feel people also here when they date, they I don't say they lie, but they hide what they want. When in Barcelona, I feel like, for example, if you want like a one night stand, you can say it and probably you will find people who are okay with it. So I think we are like a little bit more open with what we want because we know that someone will want the same as us. And I feel here they're so like afraid of asking and rejection and, all these things that they need to lie to get what they want. When there, it's like, okay, I want a one night stand. No, I don't want it. Okay, that's fine. We can still be friends, and it's not a huge thing. And everything is more relaxed. And you get to know the person, like, for example, asking the age. It's the most normal thing in the world, asking the age in Barcelona. Like, of course, I want to know how old are you, like, anywhere. But then here it's like, oh no, you cannot ask the age. That's rude. And so I think it's very hard to get to know the person more like deep. So I think that's what is also an issue here to like date someone because it's very hard to get to know the person. So I feel like here is more superficial sometimes.
I think it's quite close to the American style of dating here, isn't it? Like that we kind of play roles. And I agree with you. Like I always say this, that for me, I would rather grab a couple of beers, go to the beach and have a conversation because I think when you go to some fancy place and you dress up and it's almost like you're playing a part, and I don't get attracted to that. Like that's not a real person in front of me. That's just someone acting the part. I don't know who you are. And I like the quirky side of people. I like to see kind of the not so pretty sides of people as well because that gives them personality, that gives them individuality. And here it's all about like I wouldn't say it's very gamey because I do think that there's games everywhere in the world to a degree, but I also think it's kind of like everyone's not entirely themselves. And it is very politically correct in Canada, which I think also I like to have debates and discussions and that kind of thing. And it's hard sometimes. Like you feel like you're a bit too direct, you're a bit too honest, and people kind of they don't know how to react to that. So then, how do you build attraction if you can't go back and forth and argue and go? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like have that break rapport, not necessarily be like, oh, cool. And what do you like to do? Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
think,
boring.
yeah, to what you said, like, I think here it's not consistent. Like, at least the experience I have here with Canadians, it's like, oh yeah, let's meet, but then, oh, let's not meet. Like, I got some crazy examples. Like, for example, here I met a guy who's like, oh, if I don't go to the gym, I cannot meet you. And I was like, okay, like, he needs to, like, for himself to look good on his mind. But I was like, if you go one day to the gym, it's not gonna change, like, anything. So I had a lot of things like that, which is like, it becomes very complicated. So it's like, no. And then in Barcelona, I feel it's more consistent. Of course, generalizing, like you have people that they're not like that. But like in general, I feel like if that's what I want, that's what I want. Like I'm not going to be playing that many games, at least compared to here. And they'd be like, yeah, I want a one night stand. Okay, good. And you will have it and that's it. Like it's not a big deal. And I know, I think it's very different that if you want a relationship, you would be honest, and the other person will say yes or no, but like at least you know the expectations that they have. When here I feel it's like, I want this, but I don't want to say this because I don't know what the other person is gonna say, and then I'm gonna lie, so then they do whatever I want, but I don't want to say it. So I feel at the end it's like they get more sad because it's like they want something but they cannot really say it to the other person. I don't know if fear of rejection or like the reason behind it, but I feel like they're more scared of like being upfront and be like, okay, that's what I want, or hurting the other's feelings. I think that's also a huge thing here. Like, be very respectful and like, do you
Yeah.
want to hurt the other one? So I think that makes it very complicated to date here in Toronto.
Have you found that it's also, I mean, in Spain, it seems like people are more direct. Have you found one to be more commitment phobic than the other with your experience? You mentioned in Spain, like in Barcelona at least, that actually, and here's a question actually to narrow it down, ghosting. Where have you found ghosting to be more prevalent, here or in Barcelona?
Way more here.
Really?
No comparison yet, because I feel like here I don't really know what they want, because I feel like as they lie and they play, so I'm like, okay, is this real? Is this not? Are you telling me just because you want, to hook up with me? Are you telling me because you want more but you don't want to tell me? But in Barcelona, I feel like they're more direct. So if you're like, oh yeah, I'm not interested, be like, okay, and that's it. Like, we don't go into a fight. When I feel like here, at least a lot of people I know, they're like, oh no, because you are not doing that. And I'm like, well, you're just getting to know the person. Like, you cannot, ask them to do certain things for you. Like, you're still like getting to know, like, first stages, and they already expect a lot. So I feel like that's why I don't want to say they're scared, but like they're like, okay, that's it, that's too much. And I think that's also a huge thing here. Like, people get scared easily with like, that's too much, I'm gonna stop with this person, I don't want to see this person more. When in Barcelona it's like, okay, as we are more direct, it's like, okay, that's what I want, yes, no, that's fine, and that's the end. We don't play like a huge drama series, like, oh, I want this, but no, but yes, no, that's what I want, you want it, yes, no, that's great, and it's easier.
What have you disliked about dating in Barcelona?
What I dislike, well, now of course compared to Latin Americans, they're not that passionate. I would say, um in general, I think it's pretty good dating experience. The only thing I would say probably is like, we settle down later in life. So compared to like a lot of countries, that might be a shock that you don't want to like fully commit until like your 30s, like commit like in terms of like getting married or things. I know a lot of people in their 20s that they're in relationships and they're fine, but they just like do that next step. Usually we take longer. So I would say maybe that's a huge shock for a lot of countries. Like, for example, in France, they're also getting married pretty young compared to like Spain. So I probably would say that's a con for a lot of cultures when they date like Spaniards. But apart from that, I think it's like very good culture today, to be honest, because I feel like we are more honest. We like to have like more open conversations about, and you get to know the person. And also it's very easy to meet people. So I would say it's a pretty good option if you think like,
Yeah. I wonder if the fact that you are meeting so many people and it is so, people are so comfortable chatting people up and just comfortable socializing, whether that makes it somewhat not harder to commit, but like people are not in a rush because they're like, well, I'm having the time of my life. I'm enjoying myself. I'm having a lot of sex. Well, do I really need that? Right? Like everyone's so independent and so comfortable. And there's so many opportunities out there, which I think is kind of a scary thing for anyone that wants commitment because Barcelona offers so many opportunities for everything, right? It's such a fun time that I can imagine that. And I wonder if it's like women and men don't want to commit early. Is it women as well?
yeah, both. Yeah.
Both.
But I think you raise a very good point. Like, the fact that there you have so many options is like, I feel here they are afraid of not finding someone, like, not to the point of desperation, but like somewhere like, oh my God, I need to get married. And that's what they tell me I have to do. And I need to have kids. And like, they have all this pressure. And I think that's why also people here are like, oh, I need to get married. Or like, even like family pressure. When they're, yeah, my parents would be like, oh, get married. But like, just more like a joke than really like, oh, putting pressure on me to get married soon. So I think that's why there's like, I have a lot of people to meet. I have a lot of people, to know. So it's very easy that at some point I will meet someone that I will like and, date and maybe, end up together. So that's why I feel like here it's more like they're scared of not finding because it's so hard to meet someone that I feel like when you meet someone, it's like, oh, it needs to work out because that's my only shot. So I think that's also a thing that we're more relaxed because like if it doesn't work out with you, I will have 10 other options after.
Yeah. And I don't know which is better and which is worse. I think there's like positives and negatives to each one because I feel like the positive to Spain or Barcelona specifically is that, and we're talking about Barcelona, guys, because of course Spain is quite different and it may not be so easy to meet people in the north of Spain, for example, as I'm imagining, right? But Barcelona is kind of, it is the party capital and it is quite different in mentality. But um, I think that the positive with that is, of course, that your life is so social. Like you can talk to anybody, and love awaits you or just around the corner potentially because your life is so spontaneous and unpredictable. And I think that's a really positive thing. However, like if you're a woman in your late 30s and you just want to find somebody, like you're tired of being alone, you're tired of hookups, you're tired of partying, you don't want to go out to clubs, which I think a lot of women, they're in that position. Maybe you do want to have kids, then I feel like it might be harder to find a partner because men on the whole are less likely to commit in general. And if you give them more options, they're even less likely to commit, as we've seen with online dating, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a mess nowadays because they have those options. Like in order to have sex, men needed to get married back in the day, even in Spain,
Yeah.
but and nowadays it's like, why? I have so many
Mm.
options. I have a girl that can come over today. Maybe I can get a girl tomorrow. So especially if you're a good looking dude. And I think I can imagine that, and from with my experience with Spanish guys as well, they're good at talking. They're very good at chatting you up. Their tongue works like, I mean, not in this, of course. Their tongue works like like no other that I've ever seen before. They're very
Mm.
smooth. So I mean, they can be, and I can imagine that it can be really tough as a woman. I also see that what you're saying with Canada, I get that as well, that it's like you're going to settle down, you're going to literally settle for someone just because there is no other choice. And that's also a really sad way to live, you know?
Yeah.
And also you're right, like the social life isn't great here at all.
Mm.
Compared to maybe Norway, where I was just, it's amazing, but it's all in comparison, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you also mentioned dating apps. So, for example, before I moved to Canada, so that was before COVID, like kind of recent, and I would have never used a dating app, in Barcelona, and even my friends, like it's so easy to meet people. But now when I go back, my friends are like, "Oh yeah, we have Tinder, we have." I think Bumble just arrived there as well. So I think that's also growing there. I don't know if it's like after COVID, we're getting older. I don't know if it's like a mix, but it's also something that is growing there, which I was very surprised.
I wonder why. Why is it growing? Do you know?
I don't know, but I was when my friends were like, "Oh yeah, now we all use dating apps," and I was like, "Okay, I don't know if like I don't know, I don't have the reason, but I thought it was like very surprising."
Yeah, I think it's so much better to meet someone in real life. If you can skip the dating apps, it's so much better. Because
Yeah,
whatever you find attractive on a dating app and whatever you find attractive in person can be completely different.
yeah,
Like on a dating app, you look at someone's height, but that might be not a huge factor. If you meet someone, they're like super charming, charismatic,
yeah.
interesting, and it doesn't make so much of a difference. But yeah,
Mm.
those are very, very interesting. I don't ever think that there is like, oh, this country is the perfect place to be, because there's always some drawbacks to every single
Yeah.
country. And I do think that Barcelona, like if you're in your 20s, it's a really cool place to be, because
Mm.
it's just so much fun, right? But I also feel like you're right, like you can get stuck in that loop of going out and going out and going out and going out, and then what,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And for any foreigners that are coming to Barcelona, would you say, you've said it's easy to meet people there?
Yeah, I think it's very easy, and I would say like understand that going out with someone, like just going for a beer, it's normal there. Like for example, that's something I felt when I moved to Canada. We're very friendly in Barcelona. You would be friendly with everyone, and that doesn't mean you want something else. It's just like we are very open with people. And when I moved here, when I would be like, I don't know, meeting a neighbor in the building, and I would talk to him like, oh yeah, like for us it's normal to talk to your buildings, like your neighbors. And here is like, oh, you want something with me because you spoke to me. So I think that's a huge difference as well. Like if you go to Barcelona, just think that if people talk to you, doesn't mean they want something with you. Like there, we are more like relaxed in that sense. Like they would talk to you. They might want something with you, but they won't be like that intense. Like I felt here, and you can just go for a beer, and that doesn't mean you are dating or like they want to get married with you. It's just like they're getting to know you, maybe, and maybe you become friends, or maybe you become, one night stand, or there are so many, types of relationships that you can get. And just to be more relaxed in that sense, like your coworkers can be like, oh, let's go for a beer. And that's normal. Like you don't need to be friends with them. You can just go for a beer and just chill with them. So I think that that's something that it's a huge part of the culture. Going to a bar and just have some beers with anyone, like people from work, from college. So be more open to like people approaching you, and even you approaching people, like not like a creepy in a creepy way, but like, just go there and like talk to people, get to know. And usually people are pretty open in that sense.
Do you feel like it's the same if, let's say, I'm a foreigner and I'm coming to Barcelona? Do you think they're going to treat me that way, or are they going to be like another foreigner, get out?
I think that feeling is growing, that they would be like a little bit fed up with tourists because it's becoming like an issue for the city. So I know a lot of people now that are against, because it's becoming a little bit too much for the city and they cannot like handle it. But I think in general they would be nice. So especially if you are living there, maybe if you're a tourist like for like a week, they will know like, okay, you want what you want because you're just gonna stay here for a week. But like maybe like you're living there for like an exchange program, or like, you're working there for a while. I think that you can just explain them, and usually they're very welcoming. Like they will include you with their friends. They will, if you get along with the person, they will like join with your like friends. You would meet more people there, and who knows, maybe you find the love of your life.
Not sponsored by Barcelona, child. What do you think is the biggest difference? I mean, if we had to, because if we had to compare Barcelona to other cities in Spain, because, we know that Spain as a country is very, very, very different. And every province has its own vibe. And it's almost like different countries within one country, which I think it was initially. I think that's what it was. It was all separated. But what is the difference between Barcelona and, let's say, like northern parts of Spain or Andalusia or other parts?
So I would say like Catalonia in general, especially Barcelona, I would say we're slightly more open-minded, because of course Barcelona is a huge city and we have more immigration compared to like most of the Spain. So I think that is starting to change the mindset and being a little bit more open, because we're not used to see like people from other countries. That's why for us was a shock. But I think like we're being more open. We have a lot of tourists, so probably we know more about other cultures. And also culture wise, like for example, south of Spain, the bulls, like the bull, los toros that they call it, it's a huge thing that for us in Catalonia it's banned. There was a law that we cannot do that. So I think like culture wise it's very different as well. And as you said, like each province is like so different from each other. That's when they're like, oh, but Spain, Madrid is very different. I'm like, yeah, like in Catalonia we speak Catalan, for example, things like that. But that also like changes. Like for example, in Catalonia they say we don't like to spend money. Like even if you can save 1 cent, you will save it. And that's true. Like most of the Catalans I know, they are like that. And it's a stereotype, but it's like kind of true. So and probably Madrid they have other ones, and even Andalusia. So I would say, yeah, if you go to Spain and maybe you leave Madrid and Barcelona, like Sevilla and Barcelona, you will see how different they are between them.
Yeah, I would say Andalusia seems like the most conservative out of all of them, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I've been there like a few times. Of course, only a few days, so it's not like I'm like an expert from there, but I know they're more like conservative. And also in Spain, there's quite a few people that they're still like pro Franco, so like our previous dictatorship. So I know that's also something that is growing, and these people have very, very, very conservative values.
So, as a final kind of bit of advice for anyone that's traveling to Barcelona and wants to date there, what would you say to those people?
Just be honest. If you like someone, just go to the person and tell them, hey, I like you, or I find you pretty. Do you want to go for a beer? And don't be scared of like the rejection, maybe you will be surprised in a good way that they'll be like, sure, let's go for it. They don't have that many like issues with that, like compared to here, especially. So just go for it, have fun, and eat a lot of tapas.
And actually that's you bring up an interesting point. Is it common for women to approach men in Spain, or do the women still wait for the men to make the move?
In general, I would say men do the first move, but I think now it's more common as well that women would do the first move as well. So I think that in that sense, it's also becoming more like equal. But I think still men are like the ones that usually approach the girls. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy that we raised that the issue or the conversation around like I just find it really funny having spent 2 months traveling around Europe and asking people what culture would you prefer to date, and they all the Northern Europeans would put Spain and Latin America in the same box. I would love to date Spaniards or Latin American or like Spaniard Latin American. I'm like, no, they're completely different, and they're similar in many ways, like, of course, but as we talked about, there's so many differences, and some of those differences are that, of course, like Latin Americans, if we have to generalize them,
Yeah.
many countries under one kind of a theme, but like that, it is more conservative, and I'd say, like, as we talked about, Spanish women are quite independent, right? So that's also something that's really important as well to know, because like if you're dating a Spanish woman, don't assume she's like a Mexican woman or a Colombian woman. What are some differences, would you say, with the women, and you being one, of course?
Yeah, I would say we're very independent, as you said. Like, we don't expect the guy to pay. We expect to like be very equal. And that's something you said. Like, usually they put us in the same box as Latin America or like South America, and it's very different. Like for me, I feel I'm more similar to like an Italian girl than probably a Mexican girl. Which for some people it's a shock, but for me, I feel like we're not that similar to Latin America, especially like I know in Latin America girls are like more possessive, more like for the ones I know at least, more dramatic and more like extra. But I feel like for us we're like more chill, like of course we speak Spanish as South America, but still like I think it's way easier to date like women in Spain because we expect less for from like our partners, I feel. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but like I think it's like we don't expect them. That's why I was telling you, know, like to pay, to drive us, nothing like that. It's just like you date with a person, you see where it goes, and that's it. So I feel it's like easier if they like go to Spain. Of course, you always have like exceptions, but in general, I would say it's very, very easy to get to know the person, and then you can see where that is going.
Yeah. So I think for guys that are watching this, something that Irina has touched upon is that, I mean, if you're going out on a date with a Spanish woman, a lot of time you don't have to pick the summer expensive restaurants. She's not going to come dressed in huge heels and expect you to cover the full bill. Like that's the wrong stereotype. At least we know for a fact about Barcelona. It could vary, and of course personalities differ, but overall, I would say like Spanish women are very independent. And if you're looking for that, then it's I think it's a great country to date if you're just kind of if you're a casual person, you just want to have fun and you just want to chill and you just want to have a beer and you want to have some food and not make it into this whole gender rolled thing, this whole
I think
affair.
it's more important to focus on the conversation and to really like get to know the person if you have like, you know, a good relationship than showing off, you know, like, oh, look at my car, look at the restaurant I picked. No, just go there, wherever you want to go, and just try to like get to know the person, you know, and like be honest with the person. Just explain what you want, what you don't want, what you like, what you don't like, and then you can see, you know, if you like it, and if not, you will probably have a lot of other options that you can like, you know, meet and see, you know, if you get along with them or not.
Yeah. Irina, thank you so much for taking part. I have one last question. For you personally, is the plan to stay in Canada indefinitely?
For now, yes, but I don't think I see myself when I retire here. I think it's a very nice country to make money, to live nicely, enjoy snow. But I think once I'm older, I will go back to Barcelona.
And just enjoy your life.
Exactly, yeah. Do my like retirement home parties, you know, like, yeah, more like that.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining on the show today. It was so cool to talk to you. Also, so relaxing because we genuinely know each other. We've worked together. Like it was just like a conversation between friends. So that was
Mm.
really nice to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And guys, if you want to check out Irina's Instagram, I'm going to link to it below. And I'll see you next week with another episode. Ciao, Irina. Bye.
Bye.